Who is the most underrated actor of all time?
It's Dolph Lundgren.
Correct. Why?
Well, because of his spiky hair, and his ice-cold demeanor, and his big muscles.
Absolutely.
I must break you. The guilty will be punished.
My name is Sergeant Andrew Scott.
Come on, guys, don't do this. If I don't get breakfast, I get real grumpy. I don't think you like me grumpy. And you go in pieces, asshole.
Let's kick some ass.
Hello and welcome back to I Must Break, this podcast, the fan podcast celebrating the cinematic career of action legend Dolph Lundgren. Today, we're taking a look at one of Dolph's most recent efforts, The Best Man. In this film, Dolph plays Anders, a former special ops commando who's attending the wedding of his soldier buddy, Cal. Yet when the small wedding party is taken hostage by a band of vengeful mercenaries, Anders must team up with the groom and the best man to save the day.
Welcome. I hope you all had a pleasant journey in.
Thanks for coming.
Great to see you, brother.
You and your wedding party will have the entire resort to yourselves.
This weekend is about us.
Make no mistake, this is a weekend that you and your guests will never forget.
No Wi-Fi, no cell service. No one gets out.
You're holding the guests hostage in the restaurant.
What do you want?
You're a wealthy man, and we want to know. What are your daughter's lives worth to you?
We can help each other get through the hard times.
Where are you going?
Do my job.
I'm gonna kill everyone in here, and then I'm gonna kill your daughter.
You're gonna head for the tree line, you're gonna go get help.
Let him go. You can kill me. Just let him go.
Then the fun begins.
They're searching the rooms, 5 seconds in each room. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What are we gonna do?
Take this.
I'm your host, Sean, and joining me once again, it's been a while, is my buddy Brenton Haysom from his website, All Out of Bubblegum. Brenton, welcome back, man.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
Yeah, it's been a while. I know we've been kicking around quite a few different titles, and this one I'll just let the listeners and everybody know right out of the gate. I think I gave you the choice between either this or the Rocky IV director's cut, and you actually chose this one instead. So,
well, I guess it's my bad.
Yeah, I don't want anybody thinking that like I'm twisting people's arm and begging them to come on. I mean, obviously, I love having you on, but yeah, so that was interesting. I remember we were debating between those two, and I think your response was you have an affinity for the kind of the Die Hard knockoff subgenre. Is that right?
That's true.
So anyway, so there you go. Well, yeah, no, how's it going? I feel like we can, we could, I mean, it's been 2 years since I last had you on. Last time, you were on was for, The Expendables 2. Obviously we can talk about it more at the end, but, what is new? What's going on?
It's just been upkeep, basically. Keeping the site going, keeping, track of action movies in general. Not really doing a ton in terms of personal projects outside of real life, I guess.
Well, we do have some. I mean, obviously, John Wick 4 has now been released on DVD and Blu-ray. Have you picked up your copy of that one?
I have, and then John Wick 4 was pretty crazy. It's a long movie, but it's just filled to the brim with action that's fairly creative. Although I think 4 is probably. I will say I think it's probably time to end that series.
I would agree, and I know that by the box office, you know, I mean, hey, Hollywood is a money hungry monster. They're already talking about a 5th one, which spoiler, things ended to where they really don't need another one. I would be okay with some spin-offs, but I think they need to let Mr. Reeves go find his next franchise, his next project. But you know, who knows if a big enough payday is offered for him, then I imagine he'll be more than happy to revisit the character.
Yeah, that's kind of the, you know, it's what's cool about Hollywood, and it's what's terrible about Hollywood is that, you know, sometimes there's more than enough of a good thing, and sometimes there's just too much. And honestly, you know, I've seen Extraction 2 lately, and I watched Sisu, and there's so much other stuff out there that I think maybe we should kind of let that style go for a little bit, what they're doing in John Wick. Just give it a chance to let it just sit there in its original area. Because there's other stuff out there. And, you know, and I liked, what was that, Atomic Blonde. I liked that. And I want to see what else they can do. I mean, the guy's got a Highlander project that's been in the makes for forever, and I'd like to see that. But John Wick in that particular universe, I'm ready to let it go. For I mean, you know, maybe in a few years I'll think differently, but right now I'm ready to let it go.
Well, we are at this point, 9, almost 10 years removed from the last Expendables movie, and we have a new one that is going to be coming out here in the coming months. I'll get your thoughts. We'll save our thoughts for that one, because that one, of course, is reuniting Dolph with Jason Statham and Sylvester Stallone, but we'll save that for the end. We're here to talk today about one of Dolph's, like I said, one of his most recent efforts, The Best Man. So this one is now available on streaming. Obviously, you and I had to buy it. We saw that there was a deal where you could own it for $4.99. Yeah. Now I realize why it was only $4.99. But yeah, I imagine it's probably going to be popping up on Prime or Hulu or one of those services probably here in the next month or two. We should say about this film, I mean, there's a lot that we can say about this one. First of all, it is not to be confused with any of the other dozen films called The Best Man. This is its own, its own new vehicle, right?
Yep. I'll give it that.
And there you go. Yeah. And I mean, look, this film is wedding themed. And so you and I, we always have a tradition where we have a respective beverage. I know that you and I were talking earlier. You have a bottle of wine for the occasion for this one. Is that correct? What's the brand?
It's just Brovia. I had it at a restaurant and I was like, you know what? Wines, weddings, I'm going with it.
So my drink is going to be, here, I'm opening it now. Sorry. My drink, I'm drinking Not Your Father's root beer. It's a spiked heavy root beer, 5.9% alcohol volume. It tastes just like root beer, but I feel like you're drinking wine, you have the prestigious mature drink, and I'm pretty much that little kid at the wedding that has the root beer.
You know what? There's no judgments. There's no judgments. Although I will say I've actually had that and I loved it.
It's good. It's great.
Yeah.
Well, if we look at this particular film, wow, this is one, I don't want to say it flew under the radar, but I mean, this was a quick production. It's my understanding that this was filmed in about 10 days. From everything I've read online, I think Dolph signed on maybe 2-3 weeks before it started shooting. And I mean, if you just look at it, if you look at the trailer, if you look at the poster art or whatever for this film, I think one of the most interesting things about it is this film has the weirdest, most eclectic cast around. And I don't know if you would agree with this or not, but I think Dolph is the one who, he's kind of the right angle to the cast. It's kind of like he's the one who really sticks out, and you're kind of like, why why are you here, man? So we just run down the cast real quick. We have Luke Wilson, of all people. He's stepping into the action genre, apparently. Luke Wilson plays the character Cal. He's the groom. Nikki Whelan plays the character Brooke. She's the bride. I remember seeing her in a horror movie called, or not in a horror movie, sorry. I saw her in Hall Pass with, oddly enough, Owen Wilson, Luke's brother. Let's see, there's Brendan Fair. He plays Brad, who's the best man to Cal. And then we have Dolph, who plays Anders. He's the drunken best friend to these two guys. And apparently we're to believe that they're all this these three guys are part of this like special ops unit, only we're never really told who this unit is sanctioned by or why they even exist or any of that. They're just army tough guys, apparently.
Yeah, I guess they're a rescue team. It seems to be what my understanding is when I'm watching the beginning of it. Their deal is that they go and rescue kidnapped people. And I think that, to be fair, or maybe it's coincidence, there is an interesting idea in that. The idea of, like the bodyguard type situation where the guy rescues a girl and she sort of falls for him. That's all off screen, so it doesn't actually happen in the movie. But I think that's an interesting take, but they don't really go that way.
Well, and what's really weird is, I mean, this was one of my points in my notes is, I guess Brendan Fair is technically the lead. I mean, he's the titular best man. He's top billed and everything, but his screen time is about on par with Luke Wilson. There's really not a central character in this film. With regard to Brendan Fair, I mean, I guess he was on a CW show back in the early 2000s called Roswell. I never saw it, but I did see him in a little horror movie that he did back, oddly enough, in that. Do you remember that period in like the late 90s, early 2000s when all these horror movies were casting actors and actresses from like the CW and UPN and whatnot?
Yeah.
But he was in a movie called The Forsaken, which is like a vampire movie. And he was like this surly vampire hunter. But that is the only thing I've ever seen that dude in.
So I am aware that he's been in other things that I've seen, but I was not, I don't remember him in those. The one thing so this last Christmas, I watched a kind of a crappy little horror movie, Christmas-themed horror movie called Silent Night, and that's what I knew him from. It's the only thing I've seen him in, and I don't even know when that was from, but it's literally the only thing I've seen that guy in before that I remembered.
And then rounding out the cast is another, I guess you can say she's kind of a genre favorite. Her name is Scout Taylor Compton. She plays she plays the maid of honor and sister to Brooke. I mean,
that's a reunion, really. Her and Nikki Whelan were both in one of the Rob Zombie Halloween movies. So
was Nikki Whelan in one of those? I didn't know that.
Yeah, she was. I don't remember if she was in the first one, but she was definitely in the second one.
Oh, interesting. Well, I know that, like, I see videos all the time popping up with Scout Taylor Compton. She's like real big on the horror convention circuit. She's always going to those and showing up at those, and I guess she has her fan base.
Well, she stepped into the shoes of Jamie Lee Curtis for the Halloween movies. So it's going to grant you fandom. But beyond that, I know that she was in a lot of TV shows and such back when I was younger, but I was not really into any of those shows, so I don't know her beyond the Halloween films.
Yeah. Well, before we really pick apart this film, because I mean, like, let's be honest, okay, this film is not it's not a high watermark on the CV of Mr. Lundgren or Luke Wilson for that matter. But I think the thing that we need to point out, and I've discussed this on previous episodes, okay, but the state of independent action genre that we see these days is, man, it's really hurting. And I mean, these are the type of films that we're getting. I read a book actually that I thought I'd mention. It was actually it's weird to mention this, but it was very insightful. But it's the making of the movie Leprechaun. Okay,
Okay.
And so, say what you will about the Leprechaun movies, they are terrible and everything like that. But the writer of the book, who he goes into detail on, you know, these particular films, and I think we can agree that it is very hard to get a movie made. I mean, it's a miracle. It's a miracle to get a film made from the script phase to filming to post-production and then to release. I mean, so that's one thing that we do have to kind of give, I think, any of these films a pat on the back for, is just getting out there and getting seen. Okay. And so in this book, the writer talks about, you know, the state of making these type of movies, these very low budget movies. And basically, if you think about it, okay, you have a $2 to $3 million budget, because all these films nowadays that Dolph is kind of occupying, no way are they made for more than $2 to $3 million or so. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have a $2 to $3 million budget, and you have your name, stars, and their salaries to accommodate. So that right there is eating up. I mean, at this point, it becomes simple mathematics. Okay. But suddenly you have these stars. Well, their salaries and all of their demands and everything like that, well, that's eating up a good chunk of the budget. Then you also have so many other expenses that the general public doesn't know about. Okay, you have multiple sets. Okay, multiple sets mean more money, hence why these films are barely working with one set. And then you also have to take care of the crew. You have to have catering, you have to provide hotels, Airbnbs, etc. And so when you consider all these things, and well, again, I don't think we're going to be saying really anything positive about these films. I think we can agree that, man, when you look at all those little factors that I don't think get considered, I mean, it's pretty amazing that a film like The Best Man even saw the light of day.
Well, that's fair. I think, I mean, you know, overall quality notwithstanding, it is impressive that they were, one, able to even get this giant cast they have, you know, and what an odd pairing that is, Luke Wilson, Dolph Lundgren.
Well, you wonder, like, how did these guys become buddies? Like, how in the hell did that?
Yeah, well, there's an age gap that makes it strange enough, but just in terms of their, you know, their appearance, their physicality, it is different. So yeah, you do wonder that when you're watching it. But I think that the basic idea of this movie, the premise, is good enough to warrant a movie. Mm-hmm. Like, you can make a story out of it. Jennifer Lopez just did one. It's very similar. It's
Shotgun Wedding.
Yeah, it's not.
Did you watch that? I haven't seen it yet. I thought about watching it. In preparation for this, and then I just never got around to it. How is that one compared to this?
It's a lot better. It's a lot more fun. They have a, you know, I don't know, let's say 30 times the budget.
Yeah.
And you can tell, but it's not, and they lean into the humor of it, because, you know, so much of weddings is, you know, who's there, the in-laws, there's so much going on, the preparation of weddings, and they really lean into that there. Whereas this is, we have 10 minutes to shoot this scene. You better hurry up. Like, that's what it feels like anyways.
Yeah.
We've got we're in a remote location. We have, you know, X amount of days to get through this. And they do, you know, champ their way through it, but it's not on, this feels like they filmed a first draft of a script. Like, there's no ideas presented in this movie. Not really. There's certain things, but it doesn't really delve into the ideas that they want to discuss. They just decide to make an action movie, but then find out they don't have what it takes to make a big action movie, and just kind of, I don't know, trip over their way on the way towards the finish line.
Well, you said something a couple years ago that I've been quoting on the show a couple times, and I feel bad because I feel like I've repeated myself and said the same point multiple times. But it seems like these films nowadays are mercenary jobs. Okay, I remember you said that, and it's so abundantly clear. Okay, and again, you can't blame really the actors. You certainly can't blame the director or anything like that, because again, they're basically working with pennies. Okay, they don't have much at all. They have this one set that is available for 2 weeks, if you will, and so they're just like, get it in the can. So I don't think there's a heck of a lot of quality control that goes on with these particular films. I mean, if you look at the beginning of this film, I think it's very, very telling. All of those Bruce Willis films, which thankfully we're not getting any more of those anymore, but all of those Bruce Willis films did the same thing, where if you watch these films, it's like, and this one is very guilty of it. At the very beginning, there's like 6 production logos pops up at the beginning. I don't know if you noticed that, and it just proves that anyone who can raise a few $1,000s can get their own logo at the beginning of one of these films. I'd be willing to bet, Brenton, that if you and I had deep enough pockets and you and I were able to pull together $25,000, $30,000, and we could give it to this production, you and I could then go on Canva and make a pretty sick logo and get it in front of one of these movies.
I think you're exactly right, because I guarantee you that's how most of this is made.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when I looked through the cast, because I was trying to figure out who some of these people were, I just never heard of most of them. I realized that a good deal of the cast are also producers.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm guessing they have a lot to do with it. They probably put up some of their own money, and there's probably a little bit of a tax write-off situation going on.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just abundantly clear this is a dime store movie. This is made for nothing.
You do have to wonder, though. I don't know where you feel about this. I mean, because sometimes you'll have a good one, or excuse me, sometimes you'll have a passable one that will kind of sleep through, or that will kind of sneak through. Did you see Section 8? I'm curious. Did you watch that one?
I haven't watched that.
Okay.
The last one I watched
8,
of his before that was Castle Falls. But go on.
Okay, yeah. Well, Castle Falls, he was directing that one, so I'd like to think that. Dolph, I mean, that's a whole other story. But I mean, if you look at Section 8, Section 8 is not amazing, but I used the term, it's frozen pizza. Okay. It's passable. It'll do the job. But it's not going to really turn anyone's heads. But then if you look at these films, okay, like The Best Man, or like any of those Bruce Willis films that were made, or many of those Nicolas Cage films that were made, you do have to wonder at a certain point, like, okay, these films are so low budget, so dime store. I like that term that you use. They're so dime store. They're so anticlimactic that you have to wonder, like, the bottom's going to fall out eventually to where they're not going to see much value in these anymore, right? Like, you have to watch it, and it's like, at first I was wondering to myself, like, okay, who are these movies for? Who is The Best Man for? And I'm thinking, well, it's for me, obviously, because I took the bait. I saw that there was Dolph in it, and I watched it. But you have to wonder, like, at a certain point, fans are going to be onto it, and they're not going to want to tune into these things. And don't you wonder, like, the bottom's eventually going to fall out of these films to where we may not even see them anymore, right?
So I thought that 20 years ago.
Okay.
There were so many of these movies that were they were just not good, and Dolph was in several of them. And I thought, for sure, this can't last. But again, to point it out, here I am 2 decades later, still watching these things. So I don't know. I don't know, because there's nobody out there telling you that go watch Castle Falls instead of The Best Man. Best Man's not worth it. That kind of thing. Nobody's saying that, except you and I are going to say that. But there's nobody out there that's quality control telling people which of these movies is good, which is bad. And they're an hour and a half long. So before you're a half hour into the movie, you probably know whether or not it's one of those movies, but you don't always. So you're just like, there's just content. There's so much of it that I don't know. And there's always going to be people that rented it. They got their money already once you rented it. So
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if the bottom's going to fall out. I think that this is a forever situation. And a lot of these guys, Dolph Lundgren, Van Damme, Steven Seagal, this is sort of where they end up. I mean, it's paying their bills.
Yeah.
Although
it really is. No, you're right.
Seagal, I guess, hasn't really made anything in a few years, so maybe he's done. I don't know.
Well, and I've said this on the show multiple times, but Van Damme, I mean, I think it's fair to say he basically stepped into semi-retirement. I think he's at a place where he really doesn't need to work, and I'd like to think he kind of sees the writing on the wall, and he views these productions as maybe being a bit beneath him. And to be perfectly honest, you really can't blame him in a lot of ways. You know what I mean?
No, it's true. It's true.
Well, if we look at this film, I wanted to get your take on it. Okay, well, we'll get through this as painlessly as possible, Brenton. I promise. Okay. But yeah, you probably have a timer. Sean, I have an hour, and that is it.
I got my wine. You take your time.
Well, if we look at the opening of this film, I mean, it's what you're getting with for the next 90 minutes is very much abundantly clear in the opening 5 minutes. Okay. Yes. The film opens with a small team of commandos. They're rescuing this hostage. The hostage is Nikki Whelan. Okay. There's this team of commandos. Okay. The team of commandos, like we said earlier, it's Luke Wilson, Brendan Fair, Dolph Lundgren. And then their other associate, his name is the actor's name is Scott Martin, but he plays a character named Axel. But there are so many questions in this opening scene that the film never answers. For one, okay, I guess they're a rescue team, but I don't know who they're sanctioned by. We're never told why she was taken hostage. We're never told who these kidnappers are. We're never told where it was that she was being held captive. None of that. The film doesn't take any, unless I missed something, but the film doesn't answer. And I would think these are pretty simple questions that should be answered, right?
Yeah, well, so that opening, it's sort of perplexing because it kind of opens with a POV and it's of her rescuers. And so you're going, oh, is it who am I watching here? And until they speak and tell her what they're doing, they literally tell her, I think, we're rescuing you or something, some such thing. But until they do, you're like, oh, are these the kidnappers? Are we watching like in a night vision? They're keeping her in the dark. And so, okay, now, but we're still, it's just disorienting. So a good filmmaker would use that and say, maybe use it from her POV. She doesn't know what's going on. They're rescuing her. She doesn't really know what's going on. Again, like I said, they would go through pretty much that same opening, and then you would delve into the relationship between her and the guy, or better yet, the relationship between the guy and the best man, since that's the name of the movie.
Yeah.
But we don't really know. We don't know who these characters are. We don't really learn anything about them, even the rest of the movie. So you're just kind of, it's just this happens and then this happens. That's the entire movie. So, but yeah, and that opening really establishes this, because you're just following these people, and it's kind of shoddily edited. So every once in a while, they'll just introduce a new character. There's Dolph Lundgren lumbering behind them. He's part of them.
And he is really lumbering, isn't he?
He really
Sorry
is.
to interrupt, but he is.
But
I mean,
that's
even
before
his
they
helmet.
shoot him.
Oh, that's before they shoot him. But even like, if you notice, if you look closely, sorry to cut you off, but even like his helmet isn't on right. Like it's kind of crooked, and you're like, guys, what are we doing? Come on.
Yeah, the thing it really establishes is, oh, this is a low budget. That's what you see the kind of, I don't know, there must be an effects, like a Photoshop plugin that's just bullet wounds, because that's what they're using.
Yeah.
They're not, there's no squib work here. I'm guessing that the shootout is probably in the basement of the building they shoot the rest of the film in. And the row that the credits play over is probably to or from this same location.
Well, I mean, yeah, and so these, and real quick, going back to the weak storytelling, but yeah, I mean, there's conversations later on in the film, like for example, when when the bride's father is having a drink with Dolph, he's telling him, "Hey, thank you for rescuing my daughter. I really appreciate it." And you think at that moment, that would be a great moment for a little bit of exposition. I'm so rich that some of my former business competitors wanted to, or something like that. None of that. We get nothing. So I guess we're just, once again, we're left in the lurch like, okay, I guess it was bad guys who kidnapped her, but we have no idea why or where she was hidden or any of that.
What happened to them.
Or what happened to them. And then we're told it's off screen, apparently, that in the interim between this rescue mission and the present, suddenly, inexplicably, Cal and Brooks, this is Luke Wilson and the Nikki Whelan character, they've fallen in love and are getting married. And so it's like, wow, that's a lot of stuff that they just gloss over within barely 30 seconds.
Yeah, well, again, they do that, and it would be kind of okay if what they did for the next couple of minutes was show him going around to his old team and basically recruiting them to be in his wedding. Establish some kind of character, something with these other people, because we know nothing about them. We only get a little bit with the best man, and then bam, we're at this location and we're more or less introduced to these folks that we don't know. And they just kind of tell us, oh yeah, I'm getting married to this blonde lady who was the one we rescued at the beginning of the movie. It's quite sloppy. I don't want to say jarring,
it really
but it's just kind of sloppy.
Well, and I mean, again, looking at the story, anyone who's ever seen a movie before knows, okay, so on this opening mission, they do lose a member of their team. So the character named Axel, okay, he is shot and killed, at least so we think, and the team just drives off, not bothering to check on him, but they just leave him for dead, assuming that he's dead. Yeah. And you're kind of like, gee, I wonder if that's going to come back at any point in the film.
Well, they lose a couple guys because I remember him yelling out like Zeke or something. So there was another guy there, and again, that could have been a little pathos or something for the villain. Give him something. Oh well, Zeke was my man, and just something. But they really just don't. And there's so many missed opportunities to, if they're not going to go comedic with it, like Shotgun Wedding did, tell a dramatic story here about brotherhood and something. But it's very weird. I'm guessing they just had no time.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, if we look at as we progress through the film, yeah. So Cal, he asks Brad to be his best man. We find out that Dolph's character, Anders, has also been invited to the wedding, though, as seen in his few scenes, he is now a drunk. He's now just a complete drunk. Here was one of my biggest issues with the film that I just went gonzo laughing about. Okay, this cracked me up to no end. Okay, so, because this is of a low budget, it is, of course, working with a single set and limited resources. I get that. We've seen this before. I get that. And so obviously the film didn't want to spring for hundreds of extras. So we are to believe that this entire fancy hotel, because we get a couple exterior shots of this, just this palatial Vegas hotel. I mean, this place is majestic. Okay. We're to believe that it has been rented out by Brooks' wealthy father. Brenton, have you ever heard of an entire hotel being rented out? That was, to me, I was like, what? Like,
it's one of those things you only hear about in movies.
Yeah.
I don't think even though, there are places up where I live that look like this. I've never heard of one party renting out the entire venue. But I guess it gives him an excuse to do the Die Hard thing. So
yeah,
guess you do what you got to do. I've watched enough of these the Die Hard rips to know that. Yeah, you just got to do it. You got to find an excuse. There was a movie back in the 80s where they say that the mall is under renovation, and so now that's Die Hard in a mall.
Right.
So that they've just got to do this in order to make it work.
Well, Castle Falls, I mean, there's a great example. Castle Falls, okay, it is a hospital that is getting ready to be demolished. Okay? And I think that's how they kind of skirted around that was, okay, it's this abandoned hospital. It's going to be blown up here in the coming day. Okay, so even that makes sense. And so I don't understand. They could have said, okay, this hotel is going to be torn down in 2 days. Her wealthy dad paid a lot of money to have one final wedding there. Even something like that would have worked. But again, I was laughing so hard. There's a couple lines. I wrote these lines down, Brenton, because I thought you would get a kick out of them too. So to kind of explain the lack of guests at the hotel and just the lack of people in this movie, okay, the concierge, when he's giving them a tour, he gets a couple lines that I just, like I said, I was busting up laughing. He says, "The rest of the hotel guests are checking out, so you and your wedding party will have the entire resort to yourselves for the entire weekend." And it's like, okay.
All right.
And then he says, I wrote down two others. When Scout Taylor Compton asks him about cell service, he says, "You'll find that a few days out here is like taking a walk back in time. That's why presidents and other dignitaries from around the world not only enjoy our seclusion and accommodations, but also come back for repeat visits." So what that line has given us is if you're wondering why none of these people are able to call for help or dial 911, apparently we're to believe, okay, a president of the United States is going to be able to stay there without cell service? Okay.
It's funny, that is the line that I think I remembered most from the movie. Is when they go, "Oh, here's how we're getting around the cell phone issue."
Yeah.
Which is always fun. That I actually appreciate when they just bring it up, but it is incredibly clunky.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's even a casino. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if you know anything about Vegas, you know that, I mean, the casinos, that is the engine, that is the lifeline, that is the blood that pumps, okay, the entire state of Nevada. So I just find it hard to believe that, yeah, you can rent out an entire casino to where no one else is going to be there. Because again, that same concierge, he says, and again, the entire casino is going to be completely empty and only available to you and your guests later today throughout the weekend. It's like, yeah, I'm sure that's what a casino would really want.
Yeah. They'd be like, "By the way, there's no money."
Yeah. I mean, again, it's kind of, on one hand, it's kind of charming, and I guess you could argue, okay, that the concierge planned it this way because, spoiler, I don't think I'm going to get in trouble for spoiling this, but spoiler, the concierge is actually in cahoots with the leader of the mercenary gang.
Yeah.
So you could say that perhaps it was arranged this way, maybe, but I don't think the production and the story was thinking that far out.
No, because when you even think about the villain, his plan, it makes no sense. How does he know what he knows? How does he know, this billionaire, and this billionaire only knows 3 people, so only 3 people will come to his daughter's wedding, one of which is his other daughter. It's just, it's all silliness. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, that's an excellent segue. Yeah, speaking of silliness, there are some intentional stabs at silly comedy that I just think are, I mean, I didn't really find them that funny. So, first of all, before we get to those, one of Dolph's few scenes in the film is where he's sitting at a bar and he's reunited with Luke Wilson. We get a little bit of exposition, if you want to call it that, where Cal thanks Anders for being there at the wedding, and then Anders this is Dolph's character. He states that he drinks to make the pain go away, but then we also see him later. He's taken over on the piano at the rehearsal dinner, and the film kind of hints that his character is becoming flirtatious with this tattooed pianist who, I don't know what her relationship is to the wedding party. The film never wants to say that either.
Thanks for coming. I mean it. Been kind of a long, hard road, hadn't it, buddy?
Yeah. Yeah, remember that time in Afghanistan we got cut into that bottle of confiscated grappa?
I thought my teeth were going to fall out from that stuff.
Well, you became a man that day.
I think I'd earned my stripes well before that night.
Stuck in the sand, drunk. This impossible situation. Next morning, we did what we had to do.
Yeah. That I wouldn't mind forgetting.
Yeah. That's why I drink to pass out. Helps me to forget, I guess.
Well, it's just weird. It's one of those things, too. You know, I watched this with my wife, and she's just kind of rolling her eyes at him kissing on her and stuff. And it's like, oh, my God. He's like, 60-something. How old is this pianist? It's just weird at this point.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing? Is this in the movie?
Why is this in here? I mean, because exactly, it's like, okay, this is supposed to be an action movie, and it's taken way too long for there to be any action. We get some, so the wedding starts, right? Brooke's dad is noticeably drunk.
That was their setup when Dolph's chilling out. As you brought up earlier, when he has the little drinking with Dolph, that they set that up where Dolph's just drinking some hard stuff, and he starts drinking it with the bride's father. And that guy, when he gets to the wedding, he is just smashed, and actually fairly realistically, to the point where I started wondering if they wrote the movie around that.
Well, they're playing it like it's a joke, though, and I don't know about you, but I can't think of any bride who would be laughing and giggling at them having to hold their dad up as they're being walked down the aisle.
No.
I would think they would be livid, but Nikki Whelan is just playing it like, oh, there's dad being silly again. And so it's kind of like, what are we doing? Like,
well, I didn't know what to feel during that scene. Partly is the movie is shot in a fairly bland manner, but yeah, the content of what I was watching was a guy, red-nosed, stumbling down the stairs, and best man and Nikki have to help him down the stairs, and he is just off his face drunk. I was like, am I supposed to be horrified, or am I like, people are giggling? And even, I don't know, it was weird. It's part of the odd, it's almost a charm, honestly, because that scene is so strange, and they make a point of showing it, as well as Dolph coming in, because Dolph had been drinking with him, because he's I think at that point he's
lit up too.
With the pianist.
Yeah,
and he gets up and he is, that's their excuse for him lumbering over, I think. And then he sits down and he's like rubbing his eyes and stuff. I'm like, okay, he's messed up too. It's like, okay.
Well, and then, okay, to add further hilarity to the events, again, I can't imagine any bride or groom laughing at this. But so Brad, the best man, is to give Cal the wedding ring, but he has trouble finding it because he was getting frisky with the maid of honor. That's the Scout character. Right. At the hotel pool the night before. And so we're to believe that they're just going to stop the ceremony and he's going to run back to his hotel room, tear the place apart to get the wedding ring. I mean, what they're doing is, if anyone who's ever seen Die Hard or a Die Hard knockoff, what they're doing is, okay, they need to get the main hero alone to where he's not taken hostage with the rest of rest of the party. So I get why they're doing that, but it's just like, okay, guys, like we're to believe this is going to happen. I mean, maybe Cal and Brooke should not even get married, because in my opinion, there are so many like red flags and warning signs that establish that this relationship is doomed. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. How, at a certain point, how are you not taking this as an omen?
Yeah, right.
But I guess but again, things that if we would establish their relationship, they'd say, no, we started this under dire circumstances, in the back of a rescue van, and now this is us. We accept how fate keeps throwing things our way. They should have established that kind of thing, that relationship, that dynamic, but they didn't. So we're just going, oh my God, this whole movie.
Yeah. So some masked mercenaries, okay, take control of the wedding. They take everybody hostage, especially Brooke's dad. I guess they're hoping that he's going to give them access to his bank accounts. This mission is also personal because, okay, spoiler, we knew that it would be coming back here. The team of terrorists is led by Axel, who is the former team member of Cal's unspecified special ops unit. You mentioned it earlier, so I'll go back to a point that you made already. What exactly is their goal here? Revenge against Cal, or is their goal to rob this guy of a ton of money? Which it also begs the question too, like, okay, was Axel behind the kidnapping of Brooke at the beginning, I guess? And because that mission failed, he's trying to kickstart it again? Is that what they're doing? I have no idea.
Well, yeah, so you're already headcanoning a better idea.
Okay.
Because it makes no sense in the movie. But again, that's one of the things. There's all these, it's like a first draft because there's all these cool ideas that you could bounce off. But does his team know that he's actually here for revenge? We don't know. I assume that they were lured in for the money of it. They're capturing a billionaire and going to ransom him. That's a fine idea, but obviously the guy heading this operation, he wants revenge on his former unit that abandoned him, and presumably got their other guy killed and left that body there cold as well. Cool idea, but they don't really go into it. You're just like, oh, I guess they just left him there. This seems like the original script might have been more of a international adventure. They might have been in the army or something, and this was a operation in the Middle East or something, some war zone. And because it makes more sense that way. Now I'm going, where was this guy abandoned? Was he in, New Mexico or something? Like, how far did he have to go for help? What is his deal? He's really hung up on this. He didn't even attempt to contact them. He's just mad immediately. Maybe that's part of it. It was that Tomorrow Never Dies with James Bond, where the villain has the bullet in his head, and this guy's been shot in the head, and so that guy has some reason for his mania. But this is just a guy. He's just got a little scar in his head, and we just don't know. We just don't know anything about them, what their relationship was, what it is now. Is he for revenge or is he for the money? It's kind of just perplexing.
No, yeah. I mean, again, they're not going to answer if this film is not going to answer the simple question of who this special ops unit, is sanctioned by or anything like that, then they're not going to go forward and answer any of those other questions. You know what I mean? I mean, that's what's frustrating. And what ensues, I mean, that's the other thing too, is if you've seen enough of these low budget actioneers of the past 10 years, what's really wild is they all start to kind of feel the same. You start to see and you start to recognize the same setups. Okay, you start to recognize and see the same locales and the same types of shootouts. Okay, because what ensues from this point here, okay, the action, if you want to call it that, I put that in quotes. All it is just a number of chases. Okay, the rest of the movie is basically just a number of chases through various hallways and corridors of the hotel. I mean, we'll see the bad guys every time we see the villains, Axel's team. They're always just on walkie-talkies, radioing back to one another, making sure that they're on schedule. Okay, seems like that's always what you see. Every time we see Luke Wilson's character Cal, he's just running down one hallway to the next, going into his hotel room. Brendan Fair's Brad character, he gets a machine gun from one of the attackers. So his scenes are just him strutting the hallways with his firearm. He also has Brooke's annoying sister at his side, and all she does is cry. You know what I mean? I think Dolph Anders' character, he's given the most short shrift in this entire thing because he gets 2 scenes with some of his attackers, one where he's able to steal the attacker's suit and mask, but that's pretty much it. I mean, is that fair to say? I mean, they establish it. It's this huge hotel, right, in the mountains, but then we never see any of that. It does absolutely nothing with any of that. We just see a few hallways that are redressed a few times.
Well, that's exactly it. This is the kind of movie that either needs you to do something fun with its premise, which I think that this has a good premise, or you need to do something really interesting with the action. And they really do neither. And so it just feels weirdly rote to the point where I just keep saying this is like a first draft that somehow just got made. They just went, yeah, that's good, let's do it. And I just don't understand the concept of somebody spending millions of dollars on something so basic as this.
Yeah.
That is weird to me, you know. And in terms of Dolph Lundgren, we've gone from, you know, Showdown Little Tokyo that ends with a kind of homage to Chinatown with the crane shot coming up and everything, to this fade out. I guess we're done now at the end of this, you know, and when they did nothing to earn anything. And it was so weird watching this movie because I just kept throwing my hands up like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Well, just I mean, like, and
why? Over and over and over, just why?
Well, and I don't know if this stood out to you jarringly like it did me, but okay, what really frustrated me, and something else that frustrated me, I guess, is Cal and his team of commandos suck. Like, they get their ass kicked more than they save the day in this movie. I mean, Brendan Fair, his character just gets beat up. He gets knocked off like the second floor of his hotel balcony or whatever. Dolph, he gets beat up in one scene. Luke Wilson's character, he doesn't really do much other than there's a couple scenes of him just running down a hallway into his room. But it's kind of like, wow, like these guys were apparently a part of some unit, and like how many years have passed because they are not effective at all. Like,
well, according to the beginning of the movie, only 1 year has passed, which just,
1 year has passed.
They just make it weirder. But yeah, it you know, and I almost appreciate the concept of the team struggling. You remember the Die Hard ripoff Executive Decision? There's a line of dialogue that John Leguizamo says where he's talking. They're like, "Oh, can we just burst in and take them all out?" And John Leguizamo's like, "I can take out 2 guys, maybe 3 before they get me." Yeah, and I loved that. I was like, "That's just realistic."
Mm-hmm.
Where the idea that, okay, they understand that, you know, in real life you can't just, you know, take out a full squad of guys. It's just impossible. I like that. And this, the guy's messing with them, but they're playing it like it's Die Hard. You know, when Axel shoots their inside man, which is a very puzzling scene, but he's monologuing. He's eating the food that the sous chefs were making, and he's monologuing. And this is it's like so B movie. And so I'm like, okay, they're not really going for realistic. But I didn't understand why they didn't just pick one or the other and go with it.
Well, it's weird because you almost wonder if this production figures, okay, we'll throw, like, in terms of the prop department, okay, we'll get a couple machine guns, a couple machine gun props, and we'll get some commando vests that will have the villains wear, and then a few walkie-talkies, and that constitutes action. And it's like, just because the characters are wearing these things and carrying these things and walking down hallways and looking tough, that doesn't necessarily, I mean, you can talk the talk, but I mean, you're walking the walk is something different, to give an old analogy. But you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, just because you have these elements in your film does not make it necessarily a full-on action movie. And if you want to call it that, fine, but it's going to be very boring. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that is part of the problem, because they almost, it's like they're set up to aspire to be a better movie than it is, but it feels like there was no willingness to go there. And I don't know if that's true, because maybe it's completely hamstrung by its budget, but it really feels, honestly, quite lazy. Down to just random things. Looking at, like, there's a whole security guy, like subplot where they have this safe room, but it's just like behind two doors, but they make it out like it's bigger than it is, and I don't know. It's so weird. But it's like, just take a little time. But maybe, I just don't know why you would bother if there's not a willingness to take risks and do things, and they just don't do it. This is exactly a play it safe, do the bare minimum type movie that people warn you about when they talk about B movies. There's nothing to a lot of them, and this is kind of one of the worst offenders in that regard. Even though, I will say, I think actually several of the actors are doing good work. It's not stellar work. It's not blowing your mind or anything, but I think Scout, Taylor Compton, is pretty good in it. I think Luke Wilson is fine. There's solid performances, but there's not anything to warrant anybody like checking this out. Like, you would never recommend this to anybody based on anything in it.
No. Well, it's just, again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, it's just a very sad state of affairs that, unfortunately, we can't do anything about it. I mean, this is the state of the market. But I mean, back in the early, even the mid 2000s or whatever, okay, these films, when we had the Blockbusters and the Hollywood Video and those rental stores, okay, these actors such as Dolph and I think Bruce Willis, when he started doing those direct-to-video things, there was still a rental market. But what would happen is, okay, yeah, the production would pay for the star's salary, but then the star would get a little bit more on the back end from rentals and things of that nature. They would be on the promotion train to kind of, help promote the thing. This almost feels like Luke Wilson, Dolph Lundgren, okay, those are the two biggest names in this film. They pretty much got their check up front, they cashed it, and as soon as the project was done, it was in their rear view mirror, man. And they didn't care, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's it's so true. It's such a bummer. It really, and you just feel it. To be honest, you just feel it this whole movie. That's the exact right way to put it. I got paid, whatever. That's exactly how this feels.
Yeah, it's a job, Yeah. Well, I mean, if we look at the end, you already brought it up. I'm so glad you did, because that was my other frustration with the film, is if we look at the end. So Cal is able to reunite with Brooke, and so Cal, Anders, and Brad, they square off against Axel, and they're able to shoot him dead. And then the film ends with a hilarious line from Dolph where he states, next time, just don't invite me to the wedding. And then the film just fades out. And it's frustrating, because you're thinking, like, okay, this film, it's about a wedding, okay? So wouldn't it make the most sense that this film would end with the wedding? Okay, that this film would end with Cal and Brooke getting married, and then you fade out? But it doesn't even want to give us that, man. It just fades out with them all just hugging. And so I guess we're to assume, again, off screen, the wedding was able to happen, but we're not going to get to see it, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, where it's lazy. It's like they don't care enough about their own story. So ideally, even if you were being low, if you wanted to clear a low bar, it would fade out, and then it would pop into, let's say, like an open air wedding. They're like, no, we're doing this outdoors. We're on a beach somewhere. They're getting married, and they're not confining themselves to a space again. something, some kind of in-joke for every character, and, and then end on a freeze frame or something where everyone's happy. But, maybe Dolph's got his tattooed pianist chick there, just something. They're just like, no, it's over. If you're still here, good for you. We're fading out. We're done. That's what it feels like. And it is, it's sad.
Well, if anything, I mean, that's the other thing, too, is if anything, okay, if they didn't want to spring for another set or if they didn't want to spring for another day of shooting, fine. But don't you think, wouldn't that have been a good opportunity to do something like Hangover? Remember how the Hangover ended where over the credits, it was flashing a bunch of, like, Polaroid photos, So couldn't they have done that even? I mean, I'm not expecting much, but couldn't they have just been flashing a bunch of photos of the wedding that they could have shot over the course of an hour and then been playing, showing those over the credits to at least give us, some kind of finality that, okay, the wedding did happen, right? Like,
yeah, well, I mean, that's part of the, in the Hangover, the attitude is, this was a great time, right? Here's some other great stuff that happened that we didn't get to show you. Nobody in this movie is having a good time. This is, as you say, it's a
and it's
paycheck.
A wedding. Shouldn't you be having fun at a wedding?
I would have been fine with watching every one of these actors going to the bank and depositing that check. I would have preferred that ending. That actually, I think I would twist what you say, and it would just be footage of them cashing their checks, and I would
and then turning around, looking at the camera, and then winking at us, freeze framing.
I would have accepted that ending. Because as it stands, I'm like, yeah, exactly. Whoever's editing this is like, it's over, whatever. I would have been right there with whoever edited it if it was, yeah, okay, you got us. You got me. I watched it. I paid for this. Fair enough. I'll watch you cash the check. But no, they just don't care. And it feels like a sham.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay, we've danced around it. We've talked about the negatives of this film. Sadly, I don't think there were really any positives. But I'm curious, Brenton. It's been a while, but you know how I like to do things. I like to do 2 recommends, one as a Dolph Lundgren vehicle and one as a film in general. I can probably guess where you're going to be on this one because I'm right there with you. But what do you think? Why? Actually, better yet, why does this film not get a recommend from you? How about that?
It's just lazy. It's so bottom of the barrel, and I am a guy that I like my low budget movies. I like them. This is what they warn you about. Don't watch this kind of stuff because it's crap, and this is just one of them. So I'm going to say no on the filmic level. As far as Dolph goes, no. I feel bad that he's part of it because normally I would just say blanket, yeah, I wouldn't even bring it up to people because it's almost bad enough to be embarrassed that I watched it, but not quite. It's not Fat Slags,
yeah,
but it's it's bad. He's not in the movie, so I would just say no. I would say there is, and I can't remember how far in the movie this is. There was this interesting moment, like an hour into the movie, where Brendan Farr and Scout they're overlooking where the wedding reception or the wedding was, and they look down and everything's just covered in blood.
Mm-hmm.
That one shot almost makes the movie interesting because I think I was like, that's interesting. They show the carnage of the situation, and I kind of want to go back because there was part of me that wondered if that entire shot wasn't a Photoshop. But,
ooh, now you got me wondering. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. But it really stood out to me. There's the one thing in this movie that stood out was that one shot. Yeah, I'm sure you remember it because it really stands out.
Yeah, no, you're right.
But yeah, I don't know. as far as recommending it, I'm gonna recommend people stay away from it.
Well, you know what's interesting? I didn't even really think about this until you were just giving your recommend. But 3.5, 4 years ago or so, when you and I were discussing Agent Red, I remember that conversation, and it was so much fun because the film was so bad, but we had so much fun watching it. This is a different kind of bad, to where, and it's really weird saying this, but it's not even fun to watch. You know what I mean? That's what's so telling about it. You know what I mean? Is Agent Red, that was one that, we cracked open a couple beers and we were giggling, we were laughing about it. And then this one, it's just like, it's working with like the same type of production values, but it doesn't even have those same kind of guffaws that Agent Red did. You know what I mean?
The other thing about that kind of movie where I really feel like they thought they were making a good movie. And for some reason, when a movie is bad, the person that believes is great, for some reason, those movies stand up and they're fun. There's something about them that's fun because there's a passion behind the badness. Agent Red, it's like, at least Dolph, and at least I think I'm guessing the director, they thought they were making something that was still pretty cool, still pretty badass. And this is completely given up. These people making this movie, nobody here cares. And that really, you feel it when you're watching it. You just feel the lack of passion in there, and it's such a bummer to watch.
Yeah. Well, with regard to my recommend, thank you for all of that, because I'm right there with you. Looking at a film like this, it's difficult. Okay, and I've said this on the show numerous times, but this is the current state of action cinema. So when you're going into one of these films, you almost kind of have to be oddly on board with it. And if you're not, then it's kind of like, well, don't waste your time. You know what I mean? I realize and I respect that getting these films even made and released is a miracle in and of itself. But in my opinion, again, to throw out another analogy, okay, you just can't make chicken salad with moldy chicken. That's the way. You know what I mean, yes, the trailer may fool you, but chances are, despite the promise of gunfire and potentially exciting action sequences, these films just simply can't afford it. So, like many of the films of this nature, what you're getting are the same things that we've been seeing time and time again. Lots and lots of senseless, random gunfire, characters running down hallways, the bad guys radioing back to one another, and just tons of silly, inane conversations. Luckily, with this film, you get the added perk of Dolph Lundgren alongside Luke Wilson, of all people. So if that piques your interest and excites you any, then you have that going for you. But even then, they're even just not together on screen enough, other than those two scenes. I think with this film, what's really interesting about this one is with this film, it's very apparent Dolph was paid, okay, his asking fee, which I don't know what it is, but it would make me sad just hearing it, okay? But with this film, Dolph was paid to basically sit at a bar for a few hours of filming and then strut around with a machine gun for about a day. I mean, that is all he does in this film. It's also on record, like I said earlier, that this film was shot in just 10 days. So, it's very hard to recommend something where it's clear that the stars on screen really weren't that invested either. Okay, so if this is something that you feel you need to see, then by all means, check it out. But sadly, if it wasn't for our conversation, I mean, this is a hard pass, man. I mean, and it's so sad to say that.
Yeah, but did you say 10 days?
10 days.
Yeah, that explains about 98% of what you see on screen. There's no time to come up with interesting action in 10 days. It's all post.
Well, there is, I guess we can say there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, Dolph has 2 movies coming out that I wanted to get your take on. The first is Wanted Man, which he wrote, directed, and stars in. That one is slated to be released here in the next year. He's co-starring with Kelsey Grammer in that one. And then the trailer, as of this recording, the trailer was just dropped a couple weeks ago. We have The Expendables 4 that is coming out in September 22nd. I'll do your hot take on that real quick because I have a few feelings myself. But what are your thoughts on Expendables 4? Are you excited? It seems like even from the diehard fans, it seems like the excitement for this one is just really, really lukewarm to where no one cares anymore. Are you in that same kind of camp, or are you pretty stoked?
I guess I understand it. It's sort of, for me, it's more of a, wait and see aspect, because I understand that Stallone basically is handing it over to Statham, the series, and I'm interested to see what Statham wants to do with it. Weirdly, the first trailer was built on a lot of Megan Fox Statham stuff, which, it to me is odd, but I'm okay. I'll watch it. I'll see what they can do. If it's awesome, it's awesome. But if it's not, then, Statham's got his fair share of stinkers as well. So, it's a bummer if that's the way the series goes. But if not, I hope it's great. You got Iko Uwais and Tony Jaa in there, and that really does excite me. I want to see what Statham does with them. So I am pretty interested, but I am definitely skeptical because it feels like this movie's taken years to come out.
Yeah. It's really interesting how the excitement and just the, can you believe that this film is actually happening? All of that was generated from about 2008 to about 2010 to now that we're getting a fourth one. It's kind of like, I think a lot of people are shrugging their shoulders. I will, of course, see it because I think Dolph has a fun look in the film. I'm looking forward to that.
The long hair and stuff.
Yeah, and it should be interesting. But I guess we'll see. We'll definitely have to get to your opinions when that comes out in September.
It is interesting. The part of I'm one of the people that I liked the first Expendables a lot more than I think a lot of the people did. But Expendables 2 clearly did what a lot of people wanted Expendables 1 to do, which was really just bring in all these, heavy hitters and have them do stuff. And that now that light has faded, that was done. In Expendables 3, they kind of tried to go the New Bloods thing in there, and that not really what people wanted to do. So we'll see what a legacy cast member now. It's weird to say legacy because we're 3 movies in. Well, I guess 4 now, but we'll see what they can do. I don't know. It's to me, it's interesting to see what Statham can do with a series. I think that Dolph, I think he's basically going to be a glorified cameo, not dissimilar to what Mickey Rourke did in the first one. I think that's probably Dolph in this one. So, as far as that goes, I don't know. But I am interested. I don't know. All I can say is that I understand the skepticism, but there is enough of a pedigree still there that they could do something really cool.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of possibility.
Well, and let's face it, after watching a film like this one, which we just discussed, to go into a film like The Expendables, which, judging from the trailer, has actual real action in it and explosions and multiple set pieces, I think that it's going to be a pretty welcome treat to get to see that. So the other part of this whole thing that we're doing here that's weird is I just watched Expendables 2 the other day, or not Expendables, Extraction 2 the other day, and that movie just blows away anything that's out there right now. It's so the action is very well done. There's basically no story, but it's really well done action, even though it's like fake one takes and stuff, but it's still really cool to watch. Yeah. I still need to see that. Oh,
maybe you got to check it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, Brenton, this has been a ton of fun. I mean, it always is. I wish that we could have reunited over better circumstances. But you know what? In the end, it's still always fun talking with you, cracking open a beverage, and So even if it's a terrible film, I still have a ton of fun chatting these with you. Before I let you go, is there anything that you want to give a shout out to, plug, or mention?
Oh, no. Come check out AOBG.com, man. alloutabubblegum.com. We got all kinds of things going on. Tons of kill counts, still going strong. Lately, our John Wick 4 has been picking up a lot of traction. So come check it out.
Excellent. Well, till next time, we'll definitely we'll have you back. But to everyone out there who is listening, please feel free to rate and review the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever else you go to subscribe. We always appreciate the reviews, and we'll see you all next time on I Must Break This Podcast.